And good afternoon, good morning to those of you joining us from around the country for FranNet's How to Fund Your Business, whether it's a business startup, purchase of an existing business, or purchase of a franchise. My name is Bridget Betzer. I'm a FranNet franchise placement specialist in Michigan. I'm in the greater Grand Rapids area. Just a couple of items about myself before we do jump into today's program. I grew up in franchising, growing up here in West Michigan. My parents were master franchisors with a company called Service Master. So I was exposed to business ownership at a very young age. Out of my college experience career at Central Michigan University, I got a biology degree, but landed with a small startup company on the east side of the state that provided non-medical home care services out of college. They decided to launch franchising efforts early on in my career there as a marketing representative, and I joined the team to help create their franchise system. So I spent time, about 13 years with Comfort Care Senior Services after they rebranded from Care for Staffing, and helped to recruit, train, and support franchisees on an international level. So thanks for joining us here today. For those of you who aren't familiar with who FranNet is, we're a 30-year-old franchise consultancy firm. We have about 120 locally based consultants across North America and Europe, and we have some great partnerships with folks like the SBDC and SCORE to help both aspiring and existing entrepreneurs. And we're the only franchise consultancy firm with those partnerships. FranNet, the best way for me to describe our services is to compare it to the dating world. We work with folks who want to be in business, and we match them up with franchises to investigate that meet their needs. Our services are always free. We work a lot like executive recruiters. And so we really do focus on matching you with what would be a good fit. So in providing you tips and tools along your research process so that you can make informed decisions, which is really why we're here today, right? It's really important for us to be educated on our options and our choices, not just with the franchises that we're investigating, but on the funding options that are available to us, and understanding what the funding climate looks like today. So obviously there's a lot of things going on here in the world today, and the lending environment is consistently changing. And I'm really excited that we have with us Wendy Skimmer with Benetrends to help us learn a little bit more about what some of those mainstay funding options are for funding a new business, but also telling us a little bit about how those funding options are changing, what timing, investment levels might look like, and some different strategies that we can think about as we look at buying a business. So Wendy, thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you, Bridget, and thank you everybody for joining us. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are in the country. My name is Wendy Skimmer. I am a senior consultant here at Benetrends, and we've been helping folks fund their businesses since the mid-'80s. My background, I have my master's in accounting. I've been helping folks open businesses domestically for the past decade and a half. Prior to that, helped big companies open their businesses internationally, companies like The Gap, Electronic Arts, but really have a passion for helping folks like yourself enter into entrepreneurship in a very smart way. So today we're going to go over some of the funding options in today's lending environment. Of course, when we talk about buying a business, one of the first things most of us talk about and think about is getting a small business loan. Very much like when we go to buy a house, one of the first things we look at is getting a home mortgage. Now, there's so much talk out there on SBA. Bridget and I were actually discussing this right before our call today. It's really important to get the message out that there are small business lenders that are more than happy to lend for startup businesses, for multi-territory. The time frame of getting a small business loan has slightly changed. Some of the requirements have tightened up a teeny bit, but I have term sheets coming in on a daily basis, and as a organization, we're seeing a lot of success in the SBA lending world. With that said, it is one of the most common ways to start your business. A lot of folks will use a small business loan in conjunction with utilizing retirement funds in our flagship program that we'll be talking about a little bit later today. Folks usually don't realize, I had this question actually Friday on somebody who was looking at a $2 million project. SBA loans do go up to $5 million loan size. And a lot of programs, a lot of folks just need some working capital. There are working capital loans. We call it the SBA Express Loan a lot, you'll hear it referred to as. Those are for loans under 150. Know that we work with a pool of lenders here at Benetrends. In some categories, over 3,000 lenders will have access to your loan package if you work with Benetrends. We work very much like a mortgage broker in that we are not the bank, but we will help you find that matchmaking for the bank. Everybody wants to know right now, well, what does it take to get an SBA loan? So let's go through that, and then I'll quickly go over what the typical terms would be. But anytime we go to a lender with a project, a candidate needs to expect to have to put down 20 to 30% on a startup franchise. It's usually 20%. Now, of course, if you want to put down more, lender loves that, and you'll appreciate it in your debt service. But minimally, you want to expect 20% down. They'll lend you the rest. They want to see that you have strong personal credit. And what is strong personal credit in the world of an SBA lender? That's a 680 or better, with no short sale, foreclosure, or bankruptcy within the last 10 years. If you have one of those circumstances, we can certainly talk about what other options would be out there for you or how we can achieve that goal. One thing that you're hearing lenders talk about a lot is the post-closing liquidity. So in other words, they want to see that to start off, you have 20% to put down. Then they'll lend you the rest. But they also want to see when you close that loan, you have a great runway for yourself in your bank account, approximately 12 months worth of living expenses. Nationwide, that sweet spot seems to be approximately $50,000. So that means when the lender looks at your personal financial statement and they're getting ready to close the loan, they're going to want to see where is your 20% of the total project coming from, and then where is that post-closing liquidity. It could include stocks and bonds, retirement funds. It doesn't necessarily have to be in liquid cash, but it does have to be in a liquid investment. And Benetrends, myself, any of our senior consultants are equipped here to discuss with you how to achieve that. A lot of folks, again, best path to success is the utilization of our rollover program in conjunction with an SBA loan to help satisfy that requirement. Want to mention what are the rates and what can you expect from the lender. 2 3/4 above prime is the highest interest rate a SBA lender can charge you. Prime is at 3 1/4. That means the highest interest rate today a lender can charge you on a small business loan is 6% interest. The reality is a lot of loans are coming in between 5.5, 5 3/4, 10-year term, no prepayment penalty. You may need to provide collateral. One thing a lot of folks enjoy are the loans under 150. The personal collateral requirement is usually something we can avoid. Once you get over 150, you really want to plan on having to have not only a first lien position on those business assets, but for any additional exposure, there will most likely be a personal collateral requirement. Some folks don't want to utilize real estate. We understand that. We do work in some states that are homestead states. So one of the benefits of working with Benetrends through this process is that we will, within the constraints of the SBA lender, try and find some flexibility for you to satisfy their requirements. The way the process works here at Benetrends in getting an SBA loan is quite simple and straightforward. The most important thing for us in the beginning is that you don't have to put skin in the game and you don't have to feel obligated. And even more importantly these days is you don't have to put an inquiry on your credit. So our pre-qualification, you fill out an assessment form, basically explaining your financial situation, assets, liabilities, income, and expenses. You run your credit report. Based on that information, our Benetrends in-house underwriters can get you a response. It's usually a 24 to 48 hour turnaround. Once you get that pre-qualification, that means that we believe we have a lender that can satisfy the requirement. So what happens next is that we sit down and help you package that loan. So you're going to have to do your business plan. You're going to have some standard SBA forms that you're going to have to populate. Benetrends will guide you through that entire process. And then it's a matchmaking. Very much like your FranNet consultant is the best out there to find you that right business opportunity. Benetrends hangs our hat on being the best matchmaker and finding you that right bank. Banks have different flavors, so to say, different appetites. So I always say that's why there's chocolate and vanilla. Some banks love food and beverage and brick and mortar. Other banks love boutique fitness. Then there's a great many banks that like in-home healthcare. So we're going to match you with that appropriate lender. And we also have a good idea of how much of those preferences in those buckets, so to say, the banks have already filled. So in other words, if I'm looking at a Wells Fargo and they say, well, 20% of our portfolio is food and beverage, and I know they're at about 19.5%, well, let's find you a lender that has more room for you and the genre in which you're looking at. Once we do that matchmaking process, our goal is to get you bank proposals. So Benetrends is only equipped to do a pre-qualification, just like that mortgage broker, right? Then you're going to get in front of the bank. We're going to have proposals. So the goal is to have a couple different term sheets from interested lenders. They will come back and ask for additional information. We help facilitate that to get you to a term sheet, which is basically a bank approval. Once you have a bank approval, it's just like a commitment letter. It'll have a lot of information, most importantly, a targeted closing date. Benetrends will help you navigate through the timing of, if you're brick and mortar, finding your site, signing your lease. If you're just buying a home-based business or a service-based business or man in a van, there's still the question of timing between signing that agreement and getting your loan up and running. Benetrends will help you navigate through all of that. Make sure that the communication and expectation between you and the lender is satisfied. Moving on, one thing you want to keep in mind is when we look at the best ways to fund your business, when I mean the best, the most cost efficient, the way that's going to give you the most flexibility on escaping taxation in the future and accelerating your wealth, protection of income, boy, the rollover for business startup is going to come up every time. So if you have retirement funds that are not tied to your current employer, you can utilize those funds without tax or payment or a penalty to start your business. One thing you want to keep in mind in today's environment, if you are currently working and you were impacted by COVID, you can take a COVID withdrawal and you can use that withdrawal in your rollover to avoid the 3-year taxable event. So there's a lot of flexibility in today's environment. Would love the opportunity to speak with you specifically about your personal needs, but let's go over at a high level, what is the rollover for business startup and how does it work? When it comes to funding businesses, when you're out and about talking to franchisees, you will realize that either they did a small business loan, most likely, or they did a rollover for business startup or a combination. It's the most popular 2 ways to fund your business. The rollover program is becoming more and more popular as folks have stronger post-liquidity requirements and are really trying to preserve their savings accounts, their post-tax dollars. A lot of folks will say, well, why go to Benetrends for the rollover for business startup? Well, there's no better place to be. The gentleman, ERISA tax attorney Leonard Fisher, who created this program, is the owner of Benetrends. He and his wife back in 1983 worked very closely with the IRS and the Department of Labor to make this program one of the most popular funding programs out there. How does it work and what are the benefits? Let's talk about this. Most folks, when they leave their job, they're deciding what to do with their 401k. Some will roll it into an IRA. In today's environment, I get calls every day that say, oh, I'm going to pull out my 401k. I was not impacted by COVID. I'm just going to pay the tax and penalty. This is an example of a typical individual under 59 and a half, left their big executive job, $200,000 in retirement, pretty much the bulk of their assets, and they're in a position where they're thinking, oh gosh, Bridget found me this great opportunity. I have this $200,000 in my retirement. I'm just going to pull that out and buy my business. Life is good, no debt. Well, if that individual does not utilize the retirement program, and again, they're under 59 and a half, they're going to get hit with that 10% penalty, and then they're taxed for that year. Most of us are going to be close to a 30% tax bracket. That puts this individual at such a disadvantage now. Before they had $200,000, maybe Bridget and them were looking at a multi-unit opportunity. They're all excited. Well, now all of a sudden they just lost $80,000. If they utilized our program, they would have access to that full $200,000. So have you ever rolled your retirement funds from one employer to another? I know back in the day when I left the Gap, I went to Electronic Arts. I took my 401k from the Gap and I rolled it into my 401k from Electronic Arts. Of course, when we do that, there's no tax or penalties. We're going from one qualified account to the other. Many of us, once we rolled into that new company's account, we then took some of our investment and invested it in our current employer's stock. So when I went to Electronic Arts, I did. I took some of my investments and I invested them instead in Electronic Arts stock. What I didn't think about was that Electronic Arts is getting that money from the sale of that stock. So the proceeds of that stock sale benefit Electronic Arts. My retirement plan holds the stock. A lot of us have done this without even thinking that we've done a rollover. This, in fact, is a rollover. Now, what if you did that exact same transaction, but when you roll those monies into your new plan, instead of buying money in somebody else's company that you're just an employee of, what if that company was yours? And not only are you an employee, but you're the owner, you're the board of directors. Let's talk about how we could make that happen. So that's our rainmaker here. We call it at Benetrends. If you are doing any kind of research on the internet, know that it's called the ROBS program, Rollover for Business Startup, ROBS is the acronym. And this is how it works. Whenever you do this program, the first thing we do is we create your corporate entity. I have an in-house incorporation department. They'll get you incorporated, bylaws, EIN number, articles of incorporation. You're the real deal. Now, a lot of folks say to me, oh, who's going to be my board of directors? You can be everything, or you and your spouse can be everything. It's kept quite simple. So once your C corporation is established, Benetrends is now going to design a customized, qualified retirement plan. I emphasize that we're not just using a 401k cookie cutter plan. Really important, you're going to have a qualified retirement plan that has way better benefits for you than a typical 401k. Although we have that here at Benetrends, a lot of folks don't need that right off the bat. So you're a C corporation, and we now designed and customized a qualified retirement plan for your company to sponsor. I mentioned you're the employee and the employer. As the employee, that permits you to participate. So you can roll over your eligible retirement funds. Traditional IRA, a rollover IRA, your old 401k, your COVID distribution, you can roll into this new plan tax deferred and penalty free. What you're going to do next is you're going to have the ability to fund your business. When you buy the stock in your company, so let's say you rolled in that $200,000. Unlike that last example, no taxes or penalties are going to come out. So you now have $200,000 to buy stock in your company. In turn, just like we talked about in that last slide, those proceeds will go directly to the C corporation. You'll have set up a corporate bank account, the bank of your choosing. When you roll your money in and purchase the stock in your company will have that $200,000, and your retirement plan will be issued that $200,000 worth of stock. Now, of course, you're privately held, and you have the ability to invest these dollars in your company. I always say, if you watch Shark Tank, you're giving your retirement plan the ability to be one of the sharks and actually make an equity investment in your company. Sorry, I'm trying to minimize the background noise, so I apologize for that. So once you have invested in your company in this way, it's as if you just put cash in your bank account. So, oops, sorry about that. So what that means is you now automatically have that capital investment, that equity investment in your company. So either you've minimized the need for debt or you've eliminated it altogether. So again, when you use this program with the SBA loan, keep in mind that SBA lender will look at this as cash. So it's non-borrowed funds, 100% compliant to be used for your cash injection. Of course, the ability to use pre-tax dollars for an investment in your own company versus the ability to invest it in the market is a tremendous advantage. With this program, however, you're going to have the ability to make contributions, max out those investments over time back into the market, with the goal, of course, is accelerating and protecting that wealth and getting money in that retirement fund, pre-tax dollars, at a pace you could never have done if you continued working as an employee for somebody else. So benefits of using this program, of course, the ease in which to get funded. You can be funded in 3 to 4 weeks, but really the ability to utilize your retirement funds for something else. You can take them out of the market and invest it in yourself is really the largest benefit that folks enjoy with this program. Now, you're probably asking yourself, does my retirement plan qualify? And the best way to figure out what qualifies is to talk about what does not qualify. So if you have a Roth IRA, it is not eligible. The IRS does not allow us to roll funds out of a Roth IRA. If you have an inherited IRA from anyone other than a spouse, it is not eligible. Most other plans will qualify. If you have a TSP because you were in the service, if you're a teacher with a TO CREFTA or a 403B, all eligible upon termination. Again, one of the more recent conversations is if you've continued working, but you still want to go ahead and become an entrepreneur, buy a business. If you've been impacted by COVID, you do now have the ability to take some of those funds from that current employer's 401k and be more than happy to talk to you about how that works. Rollovers with an SBA loan. Now, we talked about how we can use those funds as a cash injection to satisfy that non-borrowed fund requirement. A lot of folks will roll in more. I have many folks that say, I'm going to roll in enough money to get my loan in the 150 and under program so I can minimize the costs of the fees of getting the loan, but of course minimize that debt we have to service. One thing that's nice also is when you're looking at that post-closing liquidity requirement that I mentioned early on, that 12 months used to be 3 to 6 months. Now they want to see 12 months. Not everybody has $50,000 in liquid funds. You could always utilize this program to satisfy any additional liquidity requirements. One thing that a lot of folks utilize the rollover and an SBA loan for is when they're looking at multi-unit opportunities. Of course, when you're looking at an SBA loan, that lender is going to say we're looking at one brick and mortar at a time. If it's multi-territory, that's a whole different ballgame. You can put that into one loan. But the combination of utilizing retirement funds and a loan and getting on a trajectory for, let's say, 6 months to a year after opening up number 1, getting ready to open up number 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so on and so forth. Utilizing these two programs together is a great way to achieve that goal. Trying to stay aware of our timing here. I know I'm going through these things quickly. I'm more than happy to discuss on a private call your situation specifically. These two programs are worth mentioning real quick. A portfolio loan. A lot of folks don't realize if you have investments outside of retirement, say you have $100,000 invested in a mutual fund account with all post-tax dollars, okay? You can borrow, usually where it is, whoever's holding that instrument or that portfolio for you will do a line of credit holding that as collateral, just like a home equity line of credit, but replacing it with your portfolio. Here, this slide says interest rates below 4%. I have a client that closed one with Chase Bank recently, sub 2%. It's a program that I can certainly point you in a direction. It's not a Benetrends program, but it has been used in conjunction with an SBA loan, in conjunction with the rollover for business startup, and is a very smart way to utilize your portfolio and help you get additional funds for your business opportunity. Lastly, something that's really important. We've always been able to borrow from our current employer $50,000, of course, capping out at 50% or $50,000 of our retirement plan. It's one of the benefits of being an employee and having a 401k. When you do the ROBS program with Benetrends, know that you will have the ability to use this program, so you'll be able to roll over additional funds and borrow if you need to, but also if you're continuing to work, you haven't been impacted by COVID and you still wanted to utilize some of your current funds to help in this purchase, know that those funds are definitely eligible for most lenders, and some folks use it in conjunction with rolling over old funds as two different sources to get them the capital that they need. With that said, I'm going to pass this back over to Bridget to make sure we get your questions answered today.
Wendy, thank you so much. And now would be a great time for folks on the line to submit their questions in that question box on the control panel. But before we take questions, just a couple of things. Wendy, you did go through items very quickly there, and a lot of folks on the line may or may not be looking at businesses currently. If you have an interest in taking a look at franchises that might be a good fit for you, we would really encourage you to take that next step with your FranNet consultant and complete your franchise readiness assessment, your FRA. That's the FranNet proprietary profiling tool that helps to establish your individual values, motives, and core competencies. This tool will help your FranNet consultant direct you appropriately in the franchises to investigate that could meet your needs. You can find the link to this assessment on our website. As you can see, it's that orange box on our website at frannet.com. It takes about 30 minutes to complete that assessment. If you're unsure if that's the next step that you want to take, but you do want to talk with your local FranNet consultant, you can identify who that may be also through our website on the Consultants tab noted on the screen here now. Your FranNet consultant can also direct you appropriately to the Benetrends representative, if it is not Wendy, to have a one-on-one conversation with to determine the strategy that may be best in funding the business that you're exploring. So I want to thank you for joining us here today. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the question box and see if there's questions that we can get answered here. Okay. Okay, Wendy, I do have one question here in the question box. I just rolled over my 401k to IRA. Can I use the IRA to partially fund the business?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Great question. That's the only question that I have in the question box at this time. Now would be a great time for you to submit that question in the question box. Let's see here. We'll give it just another moment to see if any other pop in. And if you do have a question, I would encourage you to put it in that question box. Okay, here is another one. Is the ROBS program limited to a 401k?
No, not at all. You can utilize qualified retirement funds from an IRA, from a variety of other retirement funds. It's really easier to think of that. If it's a Roth IRA, it's not eligible. If it's an inherited IRA from somebody other than a spouse, it's not eligible. Most other qualified plans, those funds will be eligible. And of course, the new plan that we set up for you here at Benetrends does not necessarily have to be a 401k, but it certainly could be.
So a traditional IRA will qualify?
1000%, yes.
Wonderful. And when it comes to that rollover program, Wendy, a C corporation is subject to double taxation. Is there a way to avoid the C corporation when doing a rollover program?
Okay, a couple things. One is the only way to avoid full ownership in the C corporation is to have the C corporation be the majority owner of an LLC. So you have to have a C corporation because the only way our retirement funds can invest in a company that we're actively involved in is to purchase common shares of stock of a C corporation. What you want to keep in mind is double taxation can be eliminated, if not minimized, to a very palatable way, because you have this, let's say, a defined benefit plan or a defined contribution plan. So just a quick example, if you're in a position, let's just say you're looking at $125,000 profit, you haven't taken salary yet. With a profit sharing plan, you'd be able to take $100,000 salary, which of course we're all in it to make money, and there's no escaping taxation on income, whether you're taking a pass-through distribution or a W-2 paycheck. But what's nice about this setup is instead of that $25,000 hitting the bottom line, the corporation paying tax, and then of course the ability to pay a dividend, and that's where folks and accountants start talking about double taxation, the company can make that contribution right to your plan. They don't even have to pay payroll taxes on that contribution because it's a profit sharing plan. So in that example, you took $100,000 salary, the company made a $25,000 contribution to your retirement plan. 100% pre-tax. You go invest that back into the market, zero taxation to the corporation. That's just an example of how we can eliminate that double taxation. When you cap out on your contributions in that profit sharing plan, we can layer in a safe harbor 401k. There's a lot of other options to layer in, ways to shelter money. And then lastly, important to mention, if at some point you said, you know, Wendy convinced me that C corporation was great, but it's 3-4 years, and you know, for whatever reason, I don't want to be a C corp anymore, you can always buy back your stock and convert to a different corporate entity. You are not locked in for the life of your business.
Okay, great. And I'm not sure if this question goes hand in hand with that, Wendy, but can a C corporation leverage the IRA funds or an existing 401k the same way, or does it need to be from 401k to 401k?
No, absolutely. Any qualified retirement plan, as long as you've severed the relationship with your 401k employer, the one that's sponsoring that plan, or you have a valid impact from COVID so that you can take a COVID withdrawal and utilize those funds. Again, as long as it's a qualified retirement plan, non-Roth IRA, most likely that plan is eligible, including annuities, 403b, TIA Craft, thrift savings plan, all eligible. Traditional rollover IRA, all eligible.
Okay, great. And are there any banks specifically that help minority women-owned businesses looking for SBA loans, or are there any special programs for minorities, women-owned businesses, or even veterans?
Yeah, you know, as you would imagine, I get this question daily, and unfortunately, there aren't. A lot of those programs stem through your current local chamber of commerce or SCORE office can point you in a direction. But as far as the lender giving you any consideration for those facts, the most I've seen is for veterans. There's a good many lenders that'll waive the SBA guarantee fee, which could be 2% of your loan amount. So it's a nice savings. Other than that, we really don't see a lot of that. Again, I encourage you to go to your local SCORE of Chamber of Commerce to see if there's any ability to get grants or any further assistance outside of what Benetrans and the lender can provide.
Great. And I'll second that. As a FranNet consultant, locally there are certain programs that aren't necessarily directly through the SBA program or specific through SBA for minorities. So I would really encourage you to reach out to your FranNet consultant, as they may know of other local resources that would assist you in that manner. Okay, we're running late on time here. Let's just take just a couple more quick questions. Are there any, let's see here, are there any different, I'm not sure I understand this question completely, but I'm guessing they're talking about if you're over 59 and a half, other than doing a rollover for business startup, are there other programs available?
If you're 59 and a half, other than the rollover for business startup, it's still worth it because you're escaping taxation. Why create the taxation if you don't have to, right? Does that answer that question?
I think it does. Yep. Great. And that's another specific, these are a lot of very specific individual questions. And because we are running out of time, for those of you still on the line with us, every situation for funding a business is very unique. Wendy and I and other FranNet consultants here working with Benetrans and clients have found that every situation is unique. It is really important, and I want to emphasize this, for you to connect with your FranNet consultant, even if you're not looking at a franchise, and utilize them as a local resource to help you and connect you with resources like Wendy at Benetrans or others to help you strategize in starting your business, whether it's the funding portion or other local resources that you might need. I know all of our FranNet consultants around the country are very open to those conversations and helping any aspiring entrepreneur, whether it's a franchise or not. So if I take a loan from the SBA, the business is closed after 2 or 3 years because of bankruptcy, how do I pay back the SBA? Interest will keep growing. Can the SBA sue the IRA? How does that work, Wendy?
So in other words, and you cut out a teeny bit there, Bridget. So in other words, if you're in a position where the business is failing and you're unable to pay your SBA loan?
Right. So the business closed, they filed bankruptcy, can't pay the SBA loan back. What happens? Do they take the IRA? Does interest keep growing?
You know, probably a better legal question because everybody's situation is a little unique, like you mentioned. But let me say this: legally, they can take whatever you collateralize. Legally, they can never come after your retirement funds, which is a very attractive feature of doing the rollover for business startup. I have not in my career, and I've been doing this a really long time, ever found a lender that's not willing to work out a payment schedule for you to eventually get that loan paid off. Even if you do a bankruptcy, that SBA loan does not go away. So setting up some kind of payment, and Benetrends has worked with the lenders and clients to work out a payment schedule and to figure something out so that it does not show up as a permanent default for you. Legally, they can, again, go after that collateral. In my career, I have never seen a lender not willing to work it out.
Great. And thanks again, Wendy, for joining us today. I know that the lending environment is regularly changing here, especially in these times. I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. As Wendy mentioned, we did go over a lot of information in a very short amount of time. Wendy's information is on the screen. Feel free to connect with her for a one-on-one conversation, or best yet, contact your local FranNet representative, and they can certainly start that strategy session with you and point you in the right direction to help you in funding your business startup, purchase of an existing business, or purchase of a franchise. Thanks again, Wendy, for joining us. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Everybody stay well.